Greetings, welcome to our series, webinar series offered through GSU-CIBER with the cooperation of the MSI Cyber Consortium. It's great to be with you together yet on another interesting theme with very valuable guests from whom we'll be hearing interesting stories. I'm sure of that. This is Junaid Evirgan from Georgia State University. And currently you have tuned in to our webinar series, which GSU-CIBER leads on behalf of the MSI Cyber Consortium. And as many of you might have attended our previous webinars, this series is conducted through the cooperative efforts of 9 other cybers along with GSU-CIBER. And this series had started back in April 2020, right when the lockdowns were talked about or were in effect. And we've been holding almost weekly webinars since then. And currently we have more than 80 webinars completed, covering a variety of topics, mainly on 3 different dimensions: on education and research and various conversations with business executives for their reflections from the business practice. And it's great to know that we're approaching 10,000 participants. I guess within next year, we will have reached that mark along with that. Now, I would like to remind you that all our webinars are recorded in addition to being broadcasted live, and will be available both at the GSU-CIBER website and through the GSU-CIBER YouTube channel. And a reminder would be, or a request would be from you to complete the survey at the end of the webinar. It's a very short one, actually. It helps us to come up with better ideas and further improve the webinars going forward. And everyone is muted except the panelists. And I would highly like to encourage each one of you to ask questions to our panelists, which will be following up through Q&A. And you may also drop down some notes on the chat as you feel appropriate. And there will be a handout to be distributed after the webinar is completed to all the attendees or to all those who have registered to this particular webinar. Well, coming to today's theme, virtual exchange projects with international partners for career readiness. Well, very interesting words in the same title, such as international, partnership, career readiness, exchange, and interestingly enough, the word virtual. Well, we haven't been using the word virtual frequently until 2 or 3, maybe a couple of years back. But now it's a part of our life. And enabling the virtual environment to basically contribute to academia, course content, research, or collaboration efforts like in this webinar is very interesting. And today, we're very lucky to have the clinical professor of international business at Georgia State, who's also the director of the Master of International Business, Professor Murad Dagli. And he will be joined by 2 again distinguished guests and panelists, Kike Ehigiator, the director of international partnerships and agreements at Georgia State, along with one of our alumni, actually, Philip Karaya, who is currently the president of the U.S.-Africa Chamber of Commerce Atlanta chapter. He is an entrepreneur, a financial consultant, and he's the founder of Karaya Capital Management. So that's a very brief intro. And with that, I would like to turn the floor to Murad, both to further maybe introduce his guests that will join him today, and kick off with a question. Murad, what is this virtual exchange project? I mean, we know exchange, we know project, but all of them together, what does it really mean? And how did it all start? What triggered it?
Thank you, Junaid, and thank you for CIBER for giving us this opportunity to share a few thoughts and share experiences, and I hope a few best practices for those who are interested in expanding their global footprint. I'm very delighted to have 2 of my close colleagues here, TK Ehigiator from the Office of International Initiatives, and she is the Director of Partnerships and Agreements. So anything we do with global partners has to go through her office, and she has been a tremendous support for me and my colleagues and others. So glad to have her join us and share a few thoughts with us. And of course, my good friend, my former student and alum of Georgia State University, Philip Karaya, who is, I think, the most important role for him as far as this project is concerned is the role of President of the U.S. Africa Chamber of Commerce. And that has really been one of, I would say, the strongest partnerships as we talk about partnerships today and how they are leveraged for student success and career readiness. So I'm glad to have Philip share his views with us and all of these great ideas we have that we are in the process of implementing. All right, so what is virtual exchange? If you do not mind, I'm going to put a slide up there, that not to turn it into an academic exercise, but virtual exchange is another fancy word for online virtual collaboration. So I hope you're able to see. I'm not going to play the slide, but this is the formal definition for it. It's technology enabled, it's people to people, it's mentored, it's structured, and it is about putting students together in teams or in chat groups or what have you. The projects are supervised by the professors, usually professors on both sides. So it starts with, again, this partnership that we are talking about today. And it enables students from different cultures, from different geographies and time zones to collaborate. So it gives that unique kind of opportunity to be in a global virtual team. And we know how important that is, of course, today, as far as the nature of the workspaces as we speak. So this is what virtual exchange is. Now, you ask, how did that start? You know, for me, honestly, I cannot say that it started consciously with a plan. It was a random discussion with a colleague of mine. At that time, there was no, I haven't heard of virtual exchange. I haven't heard of COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning, which is also another term. It was just a conversation with a colleague saying, you know what, wouldn't it be nice if your students and my students analyze a case together? And, you know, we can have them use Skype or GroupMe or whatever was available. And this was, I believe, 2012. And that project collapsed. There was no planning, there was no organization. But, you know, I think some students did this as a extra credit. Others did it as a core component of the course. We did not give it much thought as far as aligning the objectives and some of the things I will talk about today that make these, you know, successful, sustainable, impactful. But it was interesting in that it opened our eyes to the opportunities of what we can do when we bring students together, because a lot of the students enjoyed working together and they spent a lot of time getting to know each other. So even though that project back then, you know, was not as successful as we hoped, that kind of raised my interest in the possibilities of using technology to bring students in the same space, virtual space together, to work on different projects. At the time, we were also running very study abroad programs. I'm the program director for the South Africa study abroad, the Morocco study abroad, and the United Arab Emirates, Dubai and Abu Dhabi. And we thought, talking with a colleague of mine at the ESCA, Haba Abba, which I believe she's joining us today, we said, wouldn't it be nice if we have our students meet beforehand and have them work on some of the project before we come and visit you in Casablanca and engage in all of these live cases and all of these experiential activities that we do on study abroad. So there was a little bit more thinking there. There was a little bit more conscious effort to align objectives. And her and I decided that let's pick an industry that means something in Morocco and means something for us here in Atlanta, Georgia. And of course, as you know, the movie industry is very big in Morocco. Of course, Game of Thrones and The English Patient and many, many other movies are shot in Morocco. Atlanta, as you guys know, we always have to walk around all of this filming that happens on Broad Street and other places. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, I heard that DeKalb County now has the highest revenue from movie making of any area its size around the globe, which is quite impressive. So we thought, okay, let's do something that's helpful. let's do something that aligned with what she was teaching. She was teaching change management. I was teaching international business. We looked at the learning objectives. We spent some effort doing that. And I think that project was very successful. In fact, they analyzed the case. Then when we took our students to Morocco, the teams presented their work and we debriefed. And that really was, I think, a very, very nice project. So we decided that, you know what, we are going to embed virtual exchange, this online collaborative effort, into study abroad. So after, I think that was 2014, 2015, I believe. So from there on, whether it was a study abroad in South Africa or in Morocco, I made the conscious effort to have the students meet ahead of time. We always have a partner in these countries. So we made this effort so that my colleagues and I, and most of my study abroad programs are done with partners from the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies, from Language and Culture, from the Robson College, that we will infuse or embed a virtual exchange experience so the students get to work together ahead of time. And it was really beautiful because when, in the case of Morocco, when we landed at the airport, there were at least 30 students waiting for us. And they were hugging and shaking hands because they knew the people that are coming. They already worked together. And so that created that type of network, that type of, those type of friendships, really, before we even landed in the country. So that made our study abroad program, I believe, that much more successful, just because we have embedded the virtual exchange into it. And of course, as you all know, you mentioned this before, Junaid, the pandemic hit, right? So it was really no longer a question of do we do it or not, but we have to. And I have one slide I'd like to share here very briefly. And so maybe this one here. And what you're looking at here is what's been happening. So, of course, a few years back, if you recall, the riots in Paris. I mean, Paris has always been a safe location, a very popular location for study abroad. Hong Kong was the same way. You're looking at riots on the street there, the Les Gilets jaunes in Paris, and of course, the riots in Hong Kong at the time. Of course, there was an opening to Cuba. We had a study abroad program in Cuba, and then the political situation changed here in the US. Cuba was off limit. But I think one of the most telling pictures here is the one you see on the top right. That is actually a runway. I believe it's Atlanta, if I'm not mistaken, but it is a runway that has been used as a parking lot for airplanes because of the pandemic. I mean, travel shut down. So then we use virtual exchange. We want to maintain this relationship. We want to build on what we have done before. Our study abroad program were not able to go, so we transferred, basically, we redesigned our study abroad programs into these virtual exchange experiences. So that was kind of the next step in the discussion of virtual exchange. And as we did that, we started looking at the experiences. We started assessing pre and post, and he said, listen, the students are really gaining a lot of value from these projects. So as opposed to embedding them into study abroad program, as opposed to using them as a substitute because of the pandemic and because of whatever travel restrictions are there, we should really look at these as signature experiences in their own right. And that's what we did. So now we actually engage in this project. We actually applied for a grant through the Department of Education, BIE grant, Business and International Education grant, my colleague Leanne, Lou, and I. And we actually now, we consciously built virtual exchange as a main tool to develop global competencies. So now there's a lot of effort into designing, co-designing with our colleagues in South Africa, in Morocco, in Tunisia, in Egypt, and a couple other locations. So now we are at a stage where, as opposed to these random experiences, as opposed to these embedded within study abroad, as opposed to replacements for study abroad, now we are talking about a conscious effort to develop global competencies and career readiness using virtual exchange. Right? We did not give up on our study abroad. Inshallah, this year we're going back to Morocco. I look forward to going back to South Africa, but we will maintain virtual exchange because we know now through our assessment, through various tools, that we are making a difference and we are building career readiness using virtual exchange.
Great, thank you for that great introductory exploratory description. Just following up on your note that virtual exchange is not an either or, but it's an and solution. That is to complement the study abroad and to enrich them even further. Within that context, what are, do you think, the distinguishing characteristics of the virtual exchange itself for student learning?
Absolutely. Now, one of the key things that I believe with virtual exchange is what's happening today. Companies are using virtual teams, right? I mean, more so today than ever before. So in that context, we are really developing career readiness and developing these competencies for students to be able to manage differences, cultural differences, to be able to manage geographic differences. Of course, time differences are always a challenge. One of the anecdotes I received from a team, I think a semester before, I said, when I'm ready to work, they're already asleep. So, I mean, well, you know what? Someone has to give up and someone has to compromise. So I think we are, and I think one thing I mentioned to the student is my job is not to make things easy for you. I want to make things real. And this is how it is. So, and remember, in most cases, we are talking about undergraduate students who never had the need to collaborate virtually with someone from different culture and different time zone. I think for us too, at least at the Robinson College, it's about scale. We were given the mandate at the Robinson College to develop this course, global business, and the college is keen on experiential learning. So for us in international business, we believe that one of the key tools to develop experiential learning in international business is to have people meet and work on projects cross cultures, cross countries and cross time zones. We are not Indiana or Rollins. We cannot expect all our students to travel. Of course, the profile of Georgia State is unique, and we have to create something that is affordable, that is impactful, that is scalable. And I think for us, virtual exchange, given its impact, given its value in creating this familiarity with global teams and virtual collaboration, the ability to allow and enable every student to engage in virtual exchange. Remember, we are looking at the entire cohort of the Robinson College, one of the largest colleges in the U.S., business college in the U.S., to be able to allow this large number of students to engage in meaningful cross-cultural experience. Virtual exchange has really been the tool for us to be able to achieve that, just because of the ability to scale and the ability to customize those experiences across different sections and across different courses.
Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, it's very exciting. It's very exciting. You also used the word that you had some partner institutions in the countries in Morocco and South Africa, etc. So within that context, can we assume that these partnerships with other schools is important, but also local support to basically promote this activity, to get more students engaged? So both local and international, how important are partnerships? I mean, could you elaborate on their impact on running these virtual exchange projects?
Absolutely.
I mean, Kike and Philip, I think are among your internal and external partners.
Yes, exactly. And I know they'll have a lot to share about these partnerships. But let me just say that we have partnerships with multiple different countries, and we have multiple experiences. But when I look at those experiences that have been the most impactful, the most sustainable, and the most, I will say, the most structured and the best design are those that involve strong partners. And I think I'd love to say more about that, maybe give you examples of these partnerships. But for us, partnerships have gone beyond just, of course, internal. I love to work with Kike and my colleagues and different other colleges. We've done that before, especially with the Andrew Young School of Policy Study on a project that involved a virtual mentorship component with South Africa. But I think where we have a strong partner, honestly, we have a successful project, and we have sustained sustainable project. And I have one slide. I made the slide I'm very happy with, that I would love to share with you, highlighting. I hope you're able to see this, but this is what I wanted to show you, and I can talk about these in a little bit, but these are the partners that have been involved in our virtual exchange. And you can see the Chamber of Commerce, the internal, as Kike here is representing, but we also have international partners. I mean, that's really where things start, is a conversation with an international partner. One thing that's unique about our project is we involved our alumni and the local business community very heavily in our project, and that has really made a big difference. We are also working with NGOs in host countries, especially in the drafting cases that are used within our virtual exchange. So we are in the process of original scholarly activity that's built into virtual exchange. And of course, federal. I mentioned, of course, the BIE grant. We are fortunate and that has really supported us in many, many ways. And that has also been, I would say, a partner in this endeavor. So yes, partnerships are very important, and I'm more than happy to maybe share more in a bit about the different templates and different examples of partnerships that make things happen.
That's great. Well, on that account, Kike, you seem to be an important, very critical. You seem to have a critical role in making sure these things kind of flow with internal support and with everything. So, what's your comments on making these virtual exchange projects real and sustainable?
Right. So thanks for the opportunity. Like Murad said, part of my role at Georgia State is to ensure that we are able to create these partnerships. One of the things that's really important to me with regards to partnerships is that it has to be mission driven. So part of our mission, if you understand the profile of our students, is that they're first generation students, they're low income students. Not all of them are going to be able to travel. Virtual exchange is one solution out of that innovation that Georgia State is well known for, that we've been able to implement, that allows many more students to engage internationally. And so part of my role is, as we implement what I call, I'm borrowing from Murad now, a push-pull approach to partnerships. And basically that just means that we have partnerships that we initiate because we would like to engage with partners. So for example, I work with Murad on trying to identify potential partners in Ethiopia, in Nigeria. We've been able to do that for the BIE grant. Part of that is that we have partner-initiated approaches to partnership, which is that partners from all over the world seek to engage with Georgia State. So I have those two aspects, and we try and apply what I call information as service, just something that I just coined together. A lot of that is using data to establish the information. So either we are seeking information and doing our research on these potential partners and trying to figure out aspects that we might partner on, or that we are using information internally, which is we're looking at faculty members who are engaged in what countries, we're looking at the courses that they're teaching, we're looking at the areas that they have done research in, or areas that they are well-versed in, and pulling that information into our database, and then turning it around and using it to provide service to faculty along the areas of our initiatives. So whether it's virtual exchange, whether it's research, whether it's students exchange, that's part of what we'll use the information for. We were talking earlier about the importance of engaging both local and international. So a good example for me would be us connecting, for example, with a GSU alum who had worked in Uzbekistan, for example, and connecting with this alum it's enabled us to tap into him who's local and connect back to Uzbekistan, and then using that as a launch pad for another partnership, which is going to hopefully be starting next year. So it's us getting to engage in the community, know the resources that are available to us, and connecting those to activities that are happening at the university, in the community, to try and use those to facilitate partnerships. A lot of what I do also is to support faculty initiatives. And one of those will be the Faculty International Partnership Engagement Grant. We use that grant annually. It's a seed grant that we use in fostering, expanding, deepening relationships. And Murad can talk about that because he's a recipient of this grant over the years. Another way that we do that is to be strategic about the reception of our international visitors and the preparation of our delegations abroad. Again, it's using that information as service perspective, where we're developing institutional profiles, faculty profiles, and finding areas of commonality, and then being able to suggest to our delegations when they're going abroad who to talk to, what they should talk about, and be very strategic. And all of that wrapped in that mission, understanding the nature of our university and of its constituents. So that's really important. We also coordinate outreach services. We call it, one of them is called Mapping Mondays, Funding Fridays, just things that ring off with faculty to remember. The goal is that we actually have them more like partnership clinics that we host. Doing our Mapping Mondays, where we sit with faculty and use as much technology and tools that we have. For example, we will use GSU-CIBER, for example, to sit down with the faculty for 45 minutes and just help them to explore what their interests are, in which countries, enable them to identify specific institutions or specific faculty who their areas align or overlap, so that they can go together. I will show you after Murad talks, or maybe during Murad, one of the things that we also do is to highlight, I would say, virtual exchange. In terms of virtual exchange is one of those areas that is the fastest growing, in my opinion, around international right now, because it enables us to connect. So part of our exploratory visits, we will sit down with interested partners, and one of those that we put before them most times is virtual exchange, as long as there is the technology to support it. And it doesn't have to be like super duper technology. It's just having access to online technology. We put that before our partners all the time as an option to engage with our faculty and with our students. So I'll stop there for now.
That's great.
Yes.
Fantastic, Kika. Thank you so much. I'm sure the faculty is grateful that they have such a great support internally that facilitates and makes things happen in the right way. So that's great to hear. And you also referred to alum, the role of alum in developing these even further. And we're very lucky to have Philip with us, who is a Robinson alum, and he's been very active and in making sure that this virtual exchange is happening and supported through the business side as well. So I'd like to switch to you, Philip. You are the link of all this to the business practice, because Murat just said that it's his mission was to talk about what is real with the students. And to make it real, you need to connect with the business as well, in the business practice as well. So what got you interested in this as the U.S. African Chamber of Commerce in Atlanta, and how did it all evolve from your side? What was in it for you, for the Chamber of Commerce, in getting involved with this virtual exchange, and how did you support it?
Gotcha. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone that's joining on the call. Super excited to be here and talk about how we can further collaborate to make impact on the continent and not only here. It's a funny story, the way that it kind of all got started. So I got to do Georgia State for undergrad, grad school, start working and doing a lot of things around there. So it's always been a place near and dear to my heart. It's very funny. One day after leaving the gym, playing basketball with a friend of mine, a guy was telling me, oh, like, you know what, like, have you ever thought about like working or doing anything internationally? And I was like, oh yeah, like definitely. Like my family immigrated from Kenya. I'm first generation here. And yeah, I do a lot of work back and forth. My parents, we do nonprofit work, et cetera. He was like, okay, cool. Like you should come and check out like one of the organizations that I'm working with. And so I got the opportunity to go back and forth to DC for a couple years and eventually take over as president for Model African Union while I was an undergrad at Georgia State. And so through that whole experience, I got to go back and forth to DC and talk with a lot of other students as we looked at case studies as far as what was going on overseas and what was possible. So it was very funny. Now, fast forward like 10 years, another developer, a real estate developer that I know and do some work with was like, oh, like I was at a conference over in California and they were basically telling me about a bunch of stuff they were doing overseas. And they're looking to start a chapter for the chamber over here and just help collect and provide resources for people as it was there. And he was like, I have way too much stuff going on. He's like, is this something you'd be interested in doing? And I was like, wow. I was like, it almost like took me back. There's been a lot of work like in between, but I was like, all right, I'm finally kind of settled in a place where I can manage doing a little bit of both. And so I was like, yes. I was like, that's awesome. Let's do it. And so one way or another, me and Murad ended up connecting first through me being his student and us being able to reconnect at the IB dinner that was there. And the conversation had recontinued. And so after that, we started talking about what was interesting and what was there and what we could possibly build together. I think when it comes to providing access to not only information and resources, but then really being able to distribute that to the way that people need it. Because a lot of people will Google the things that they need, but it's hard to have people that are actually going to walk with you and show you what's possible. They're going to actually give you the one-on-one introductions to like what's there. We recently were able to collaborate and have a very wonderful conference that was held in August with great help to our partners with you all at Georgia State and at the Russell Innovation Center. And I think a big part of everything for me is like, let's go ahead and find ways to collaborate, not only with each other, but then empower those overseas so that we can get things done. I think one of the things that we look at is, unfortunately, people go over to the continent as an emerging market and think they know what they should be doing, when really we should be walking with like hand by hand and figuring out what we can do to like build things together. And sometimes take a step back and make sure that we're listening, being culturally appropriate to like what's going on over there, because things do function very differently, even just in the sector of Africa that you're particularly in. And so for me, this has just been a wonderful opportunity to work with very amazing people and help provide resources and access to those over there and continue doing that. So I think with virtual exchange, it'll be a great way to kind of break the barrier, because accessibility as far as flying back and forth, getting green cards, getting HB1 visas can sometimes be a pain, but now we have ways to get past that barrier and do some really awesome things.
Thanks a lot, Philip. It's really very, very exciting. I mean, isn't that the ideal world? I mean, we want to develop the career of our students and graduate in that manner and be successful. And they get fed through the faculty, through the coursework in terms of content and how to do things, etc. But they're also tied into the real world in which they will operate in whatever capacity. So putting everything together, I think, is the best of all worlds. And Karen, from our participants, notes what an admirable programming, and has a question, Murad, possibly in your way, asking whether there are any scholarly papers on this area that you would like to receive citations, or your notes on the academic output in regards to such projects.
Yes, and I'll again, I have a couple of notes. We have presented extensively on this, and as a matter of fact, we presented the paper at the AUM conference on virtual exchange. So there are a couple of papers in there that were conference papers. We are, and I can share with you real quick, we actually have been doing quite a bit of assessment, and just kind of to share this briefly. We've done qualitative assessment and quantitative assessment. We've used this the cultural sensitivity scale here, that the value scale, and we use in vivo. So these are, I'm not sure if you're able to see this. Are you able to see this?
Yes.
Very
yes.
Good. So, and actually the paper we are writing right now revolves around this. So we actually have done, as I mentioned before, pre and post. in all of the projects. We have templates of projects, and we have always done pre and post. We've done it now with this scale, but we also have done this earlier for another project. And for that project, we used the IES, Intercultural Effectiveness Survey. Plus, we've done just to kind of work hard to highlight some of the concerns and some of the successes of the students. So assessment has been a big component. And right now, we are actually in the process of drafting paper. The paper was presented at the Graduate Research Conference at Georgia State just last week. Another one was at the Academy of International Business, and we hope very soon that some of these will be published. We actually are talking about the stream of research. So I'm glad you asked that question, because from the faculty perspective, this does offer a very good opportunity for scholarly output if, in fact, assessment is a big part of it. And this is, I think, one kind of to-do recommendation I will suggest for anyone who's interested in this is to start early and make sure you collect the pre and post and save those. These are your conference papers, these are your panel papers, and these will be eventually your published papers.
Fantastic, excellent. I mean, such a synergistic area to operate in, right? I mean, students students gain a lot of things, faculty gain a lot, businesses gain a lot. And it's just highly exciting. So with all this, would you, Murat, please identify the key success factors in like bullet points, like what others interested in designing and running such projects need to be careful about? You already noted a couple, but like in a nutshell, what are the key things?
Yes, honestly, I think partnerships is still a big part of that. Kike mentioned the FIPE grant, and I was a recipient of that, and that's really helped a lot. Internal, external, there are always funding opportunities out there, but also really consciously develop this strong partnerships. Since I'm sharing this, I would like to kind of share this one slide with you that's telling to me of why is it that some of these partners are long-standing. Of course, we're talking about virtual exchange, right? But when you look at what we have done, these are the partners that really count. We are very proud of our partnership with ESCA in Morocco, with MSB, Southern Mediterranean University, Mediterranean School of Business in Tunis, and then South Africa. But you notice that these have involved face-to-face interaction. The sign that these partnerships are strong, they're thriving, is that we visit them and they visit us. So on the top set of pictures, you see our students working with ESCA students on a live case for a company called Sultan Tea. We've done live cases for other companies, including Procter & Gamble there. So this is a very strong partnership. And then on the right side there, that's the president of ESCA University that visited Kike's office, and Kike is right there. And again, so now these partnerships are not just personal per se, they're not faculty to faculty, but they are institutionalized. We are talking of partnership between ESCA and the Institute of International Business and Georgia State University. So I think that speaks volume to the value of these partnerships. The second set of pictures, that's Tracy Olson and her team there, and that's Wolfgang Schlor, he's our Associate Provost for International Engagement, and this is in Tunisia. So we traveled there, we shook hands, and we went there, and it was quite meaningful and quite helpful to kind of speed up and strengthen our partnerships. On the bottom one, that's in South Africa. We go to South Africa before, we do some consulting projects, student consulting projects, but you're looking at some of their faculties mentoring our students on their case writing initiatives. So I mentioned these, and of course we're talking about virtual exchange, but really I still believe that in building these partnerships, you need to meet your partners. You need to meet with them in person, and you need to visit the classrooms, maybe invite them over. And honestly, the most successful partnerships are those that have been built on that in-person interaction. So that is, I think, the first factor. The second is one element we included in our project, and that is mentorship. We are very fortunate in the Robson College of Business in that we have a wide pool of alumni that are all over the world. And they are really eager and ready to help. And I am very thankful. I know some of them are with us today on this call here, and some of them registered. They would like to watch this later. But you're looking at some of the most active alumni. And these alumni, of course, we cannot have one-on-one. We're talking about 500 to 700 students. But we created this virtual alumni experience where some of these alumni will come to the classroom, answer questions. You see Don Williams there joining our class, synchronous online class with our colleagues from Tunisia. Dia Gali has one of the award-winning companies in export. Martin Wilson and Jeffrey Nzello, Eddie, all of those are our alumni and business community partners. We ask a lot of the students. We ask them to complete risk assessment and opportunity assessment and supply chain issues and export readiness. Undergraduates find that quite challenging. So what we found is by having alumni join us, and then we pull the questions, we share them with the alumni, then they join us in the classroom, or sometimes by writing or by video, answer those questions for the students. So we found this model to be scalable, to be manageable, and to be very effective. And kudos and thank you to all of our alumni who are with us, have been with us from the beginning of Virtual Exchange and have really added a very important component as we extend the Virtual Exchange and the VIE grant. That's the second component. The third component, honestly, is what you're looking at here, and that is flexibility. I was on the other side of it. I was professor in Kuwait. And one thing that I really did not appreciate too much is when you have this, someone from an American university comes in, goes to Kuwait or other places, like, I have the solution for you, this is the project, and this is what you should do. So what we decided to do is to create a portfolio of projects. Some of them center around innovation, and we use global innovation challenges. Some of them just look at critical assessment of emerging trends and their implication on Africa, on different stakeholders, on SMEs. Some of them look at risk and opportunity assessment in specific countries using the PESTEL framework. And some of them are more engaged, case writing. It's quite demanding, and it requires quite a bit of support. So you're looking at just 4 different templates, and all of these templates can be adjusted. So when we start the conversation with a partner, we don't come in and say, this is what we want to do, and this is what you have to do. We go in with the conversation of, these are things we've done, these are different projects, these are different templates. Which one do you think will fit with yours? How can we adjust this? What ideas do you have that fit, or maybe different ideas? And I think it makes the conversation, especially the starting point of designing project, that's much more effective, because we do have now a history of quite a few years of doing this. And I think that flexibility, that openness, and aligning objectives, learning objectives of whatever course, whatever partner you're working with, and making sure that there is a good intersection between what you do here and what they do there, I think is key to the success. I think so those 3 elements, partnerships, of course, mentorships, and flexibility in terms of going in with the portfolio of projects, has really been very helpful for us in terms of making sure that these are successful and impactful projects.
That's excellent. That's excellent. In order for us to feel it even in better, would you please go in depth in one example?
Yes.
At least one example, so that we get a good feel of what's really happening in detail.
Absolutely. I can, and I don't know if I want to, but I'll give you one example of maybe the project with the case writing. How about the case writing project here?
Okay.
This is the project we've done with Tunisia, and basically what we've done, we brought the students from Tunisia and our students, and we asked them the challenging task of drafting original business cases. Right. So that's a tall order. We develop a pool of resources, including videos, guides on writing cases. My colleague and I, we talked about specific topics to structure the discussion. So my colleague Asma Shaibi, who is actually with us, I believe, today, and I did provide guidance. But in that specific project, we actually had synchronous sessions together. So we were able to really provide that guidance by aligning the timing. So they were actually flexible enough, our partner in Tunisia at SMU, to arrange so that the students took the class the same time of our class. So we were able to have them join. We use Zoom. We use the breakout session. So we worked together on the design of that project. We worked together on the mentoring of that project on both sides. We had mentors on both sides, help the students as they went through the process. And then CIBER was very generous, and they actually sponsored a case competition. And that was, and kudos to those who won. We had actually some of our own mentors and business partners help us with assessing these projects. But also at the same time, we presented these cases at the Academy of International Business Midwest Conference. So the students were able to put their name on a conference paper, and that makes a big difference for someone who's going into grad school and what have you. So I think I'm going to show now perhaps maybe the students who won this competition. Just gonna shout out to them, and they are right here. There you go. So this is the first team. I hope you are able to see this.
Mm-hmm.
This is the project I am talking about. I think I need to go back to that slide. There we go. So these are the teams that won, and what you're looking at now are mixed teams. Two members from Georgia State and 2 members from SMU, the Southern Mediterranean University. This, I think, was a very successful project. It was a very demanding project, but was very successful. And it was successful because we were able to align the timing, we were able to align the learning objectives, we were able to provide support on both sides. So to be able to honestly pull off something as rigorous as this for an undergraduate class, it requires the flexibility I was talking about, it requires the mentorship I was talking about, and it requires, of course, the strong partnership that we are very fortunate to have with our partner in SMU, Southern Mediterranean University in Tunisia. So this is kind of I can use this as a poster project for the type of achievement we can do. And these kids, like I said, now are published, at least at the conference.
That's great. That's great. And Berin, one of our participants, wants to specifically ask, how often do these virtual teams meet? And what does a typical meeting look like?
Yes, very good. It really depends. Again, remember the different templates that I shared with you. So, for example, by the way, we ask them to provide briefings of their meetings to make sure they are meeting. Of course, these are undergraduate students. There's certain structures and expectations in there. But in general, we ask them to meet once a week. Sometimes because of exams, they don't manage to meet once a week. If it is one of those synchronous sessions where we actually are able to bring our partners together, then we give them space and time to meet virtually on Zoom in breakouts. If not, remember, our courses are taught in every modality: asynchronous online, synchronous online, hybrid, in person. So we have to be flexible in terms of how we manage these, as long as the students meet on a regular basis. Again, we suggest once a week. They provide briefings. We use peer evaluations, of course. We use peer assessment. So all of the tools that go into managing teams and managing virtual teams are used. But those teams that are the most successful are those that manage to meet and spend time discussing and brainstorming.
Thank you very much, Murat. By the way, there is a question about sharing your slides. The slides used by Murat will be shared after the webinar to all those who have registered to this webinar. Now, as we're coming closer to the end, I want to go back to Kike and Philip for their recommendations in how to approach businesses, how to approach institutions. If any of you is interested, because what Murat describes appears to be a very good best practice, where different components, critical components, have been put together to create the necessary ecosystem, both in terms of content, in terms of operation, in terms of funding, etc. So in doing that, let's start with Philip, with you, and then go to Kike. In a couple of minutes, in a nutshell, would you please describe what your recommendations would be in approaching to universities and to faculty, in approaching such partners from the business side?
Sure, and I can definitely discuss about some of the things that we're working on currently with Georgia State as it is. So one of those things, of course, is going to be, like they were saying, internships and field studies. And so utilizing the resources in our own database of people that are doing business overseas, that are doing business here, because you might have people that are looking to learn one way to the other versus the other, then you have those few people that are doing business on both continents. And so making sure that we're placing students in short-term virtual internships and through our membership network and the various affiliates, direct mentorships, like directly. If you have people that are interested in doing an education, you know, granted, it could be difficult depending on the level of scale that people have going on work, but all we have to do is ask. The worst thing someone could say is no, but for those that have the bandwidth to do the one-on-one mentorships, to do the group mentorships, to talk about what's important, what's possible, what's available. And that's one of the things that I know will also be possible through the utilization of the BIE grant. And so super excited to work together with Murad to make all those things possible. Outside of that, doing joint partnerships, webinars, things like this, information, making sure we're coming here, availing our time, our own knowledge, our own opinions, and, you know, based off our own experiences, what's possible to do as we work together, all together. So outside of that, just continuing working together in collaboration. I know Georgia State's going to continue partnering together as we put on an annual conference and we bring together world leaders while also putting students in the room, while also putting business owners in the room, and then letting magic happen. Sometimes it's not always about forcing, saying what you have to do, but putting people in the right room and then letting them naturally interact, because those are the best relationships that they can have, because those are the ones that they choose. So yeah.
Isn't that so true? I mean, bringing together like-minded people, believing in the same mission, and just bringing their own resources onto the table to create something larger than the sum of the parts. Kike, coming back to you now. I mean, you've been so central, your department has been so central in making these things happen at the end of the day. So what would be your recommendations to our participants, to their universities or their colleges or their administration, based on your experience? What would be your recommendations?
Right. So can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. I'm going to put up a slide really quickly as I do this. One of the, can you see anything?
Yes, we can.
Okay, because I cannot. Okay, so one of the things that I would advise is strategy and being intentional. The map that you're seeing is our virtual exchange programs that one of my colleagues put together. The goal is to use outcomes of our strategy to further promote the effort. Like I said to you before, one of the fastest growing international programming is in virtual exchange. Being able to demonstrate the outcomes of institutional effort is very important. I would project that this map that you're seeing will probably be covered in like three to 4 years. Maybe not all of the world, but Georgia State is definitely pushing towards it. The other is to find a way to capture these activities so that you are keeping a record of it institutionally. So one of the things that I've done is to create a virtual exchange agreement template that helps us to capture a summary and also the participants, the leaders of this initiatives on campus, so that you're also using that to promote among other faculty and enabling an in-house networking to understand if you would like to start a virtual exchange, that you know that you're not starting off on your own and that you can always identify a Georgia State faculty as well as international partner faculty as well.
That's excellent. That I hear that as an open invitation to different institutions around the globe to knock on our door.
Definitely.
Maybe start up and add on new virtual relationships.
Definitely.
That's great. Well, I'm not sure if I can pronounce it right, but I apologize if I mispronounce it. Schneidin Luis has a question. Murat, I think you want to take on that. But I do have a concern about the trust between colleagues while working virtually. So how do you deal with that concern, colleagues working virtually?
Absolutely, and that's a great question, because to assume that everything is going to go smooth, that's not the reality. There are always issues, and just kind of to make sure that we have a realistic preview of what virtual exchange. There are some challenges, a little bit more demanding. Students sometimes are not comfortable, it takes a little bit of time, but there are tools and ways that have been validated for teams to create team trust. So for example, in all our projects, we have what's called team charter, right? And team charter is basically the team members have to get together and they have to agree, they have to say something about each other. So if it's in the classroom, for example, we have our team members, we have them meet ahead of time, but actually the South African member has to introduce the the Georgia State student, and the Georgia State student has to say something about the South African member. One project that has also kind of an introductory project is to come up with a team name. But the team name has a condition that it has to reflect something common to all team members. So that is not going to solve all problems, but it really does go a long way in terms of how teams create trust. Again, we have learned a lot from virtual teams and all of those different tools and frameworks. And I know we're running out of time, but I would like to share this very briefly with you. These are here. I hope this is you're able to see this. These are the team names for one of our projects. Team Mars, because they found out they all care about the environment and they think that we're all going to end up going to Mars because we're going to destroy Earth. The Team Nice, just because it's NICE happened to be their initial. Foodies, because they found out they all love food. I like Team Purple because two of them like the color blue, two like the color red, so they call themselves Team Purple. So it was a fun exercise and a way to ease into the project. Don't just give them, you are writing a case and start today. Try to kind of develop these stepwise different projects here and there to create that trust. And I'm so glad you asked that question, because trust is more difficult to create in a virtual environment anyway.
Yeah.
When you are talking about the global environment and different cultures and different things. But you know, that's why they have to provide briefings. And as soon as issues arise, we need to jump in there and make sure that to help them, give them the chance, of course, to solve their problems. But again, that is a key ingredient in all of these collaborative efforts, no matter whether they are virtual exchange or, of course, otherwise, when you are talking about teams.
Excellent, excellent trick, excellent example. Thank you, Murad. A very short question for you, Kike, coming from Karen. In terms of, you showed the global map and your virtual exchanges. The question is, how many are team project oriented? So is it a global plus virtual plus team project or short-term collective assignment? And she commends the work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. They're definitely, just as Murad just said, are all team oriented. I mean, there is the display that I showed you shows the partnerships between faculty. These are all faculty led. And so there has to be that connection between faculty, and then the faculty introduces the students, and then the faculty's engagement is what drives the activities actually that's going on. So, you know, if it's for a short period of time, yes, that's possible within virtual exchange. It could be that, you know, it's just like a few weeks. It could run for the whole length of the course. It depends totally on the faculty, and yes, they're all team oriented. Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Well, as we're coming to the close, Murad, I'd like to ask for some of your concluding remarks before we get to thanking you.
Thank you, Junaid. I mentioned at the beginning, we started out as a fun exercise on the side that developed into an activity within a study abroad, and then the pandemic comes in, and then we have to move away, and then we stumble on something that's, I think, exciting, impactful, and I think unique signature experience. And we've been able to build this amazing partnerships. I'm very glad to share with you that we have extended our partnership beyond virtual exchange with the partners now. So actually, some of our collaborators in Morocco will be visiting scholars with us. We expect another one, hopefully soon, from Tunisia. We have scholarly output case. We have a couple cases we have written that are with the virtual exchange partners, but we're only started. I think the opportunities are out there now. We're talking about virtual exchange and the metaverse and all of that, and I get very excited thinking about the opportunities of virtual exchange when we have those type of technology and those type of platforms and what the students can do working in teams. So I think we are only starting. It seems like we've done a lot, and we have done quite a bit. But I think what the future holds a lot more opportunities and a lot more impactful, exciting things when it comes to virtual exchange. Well, it's great to see that questions are pouring in as we're about to close. So thank you for that engagement. We apologize if there will be questions that we cannot answer live, but we'll get back to you with our responses.
And at this point, again, I would like to thank Murad, Kike, and Philip for their insightful sharings, open sharings, and very, very useful. I mean, it's not just about talking and defining things, but it's about going into details of how to execute, because without execution, nothing happens. And execution requires multiple parties, coordination, and depthness to all this mission. And I think we heard about a best practice example that will take us into the new world. Also behind the scenes, we got Paulo Huntley and Jamaica and Dr. Cowskill supporting us and to run this webinar and making it happen. And we thank them dearly for initiating these series and which we will continue with other intriguing panelists or speakers moving forward. And I would just like to remind you to spare a couple of minutes of your time to complete the survey. That's very helpful, very valuable for us if you would show us new directions, new ideas, and reflections. So thank you for being with us. See you next time.